Well, hello there, human zippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to. I'm Bushcon Blitz, and that's a little bit of a joke because though they do look incredibly similar, the T20 and the T21 are actually quite different tanks. Surprisingly, the T20 is a lot smaller when you view them side on. Well, not a lot, but it's a little smaller than the Tier 6 Light, the Tier 7 Medium, that is. And though they do share a couple of common failings, namely not fantastic gun penetration numbers, and they have a very, very common hull or chassis, this is where the real difference is. The Tier 6 T21 is a legitimate light tank. That's the T20 giving it a good 20 metre break and trying to serve it up a little bit of love. And look at the T21 just take it apart in the speed stakes. It's much more agile. It's much more energetic when it comes to getting out and getting up hills and down dales and moving around and circle of deathing enemy tanks. And for those reasons alone, you should scrub the comparisons altogether. It's a good tank. The T21, like the T71 that follows it, is a good tank. It's a light tank. And the other thing it does that a lot of Tier 6 and Tier 6 tanks especially can't do is mount a vertical stabilizer. And that means it's a wonderful gun platform when you're firing on the move or when you're firing backwards and forwards. As you can see, they're really, really solid. The VK2801 that you can see getting out just ahead of it there is a faster tank. And look, the VK is a better tank. But that doesn't mean the T21 is a bad tank. There's some really, really good tanks around at Tier 6, especially light tanks like the VK2801 and good premium tanks like the Cromwell B and the like. So there's no shame in not being as good as the 2801. The 2801, in my opinion, is one of the best tanks in the game, pound for pound. Like, it's just not comparable. But what it does have is a whole lot of nimble mobility. 61.59 degrees are your traverse numbers and 51 degrees on your turret. Now those are when I'm running double rations and vents. The reason all these numbers are fully equipped, and there's a reason for that, and I want to go through that very, very quickly. When they've brought in this new dynamic display for your stats, if you've got an auto loader and you're thinking your DPM is the stated, say, 2000 DPM, well, that's not quite true, because when you come up against a standard medium that has 1800 DPM, they can put a gun rammer on that you can't. They're going to run their vents, they're going to run all those kind of things, and they end up with a lot more DPM than you do, and your DPM doesn't change. So from here on in, all the reviews I'm doing are basically going to have DPM fully equipped, fully rigged, because that way you will see the big disparity between a lot of the tanks that can't, for instance, run a vertical stabilizer or can't run an auto loader, can't run a rammer, that kind of thing. So your DPM on this is exactly the same nearly as the VK2801. You can pump out plenty of damage, just like the Cromwell 2801. They're all around that same 160 alpha at 11.8 rounds a minute for this one. They're all right around that point. Your penetration numbers are what's going to let you down. 128 millimeters of pen on your AP and 177 on your APCR. You're going to see here how good it is at getting around tanks. And that's the key for this tank. You want to be able to brawl it. You want to be able to get up close and personal as the battle unfolds when you see the weak spots in the enemy's line, and the T21 can do that, and that's good. It's not an overpowered tank, and for a line that's produced what a lot of people believe to be negative tanks, subpar tanks, and there's a couple of them in there. The Tier 8 particularly I don't like. The Tier 10 is not overpowered, but I mean, I never really expected it to be overpowered. I'd seen it in the testing phase and such, so I wasn't really expecting that to be the case. Have a look at my mate Snakes. Official Snake Eyes kill steal coming up. He runs across the map to steal it from me. That's such a grub. But this tank can hold its own, more than hold its own. It's a light tank. So what does that mean? Why is that so good, you might ask yourself? Well, light tanks are great because they have this thing called on-the-move camouflage. They have exactly the same camo that going 60 kilometers an hour that they have stock still, absolutely stock still. And you're going to see when I play a little bit later on, I'm going to show you a game on Middleburg, not far away now, where I actually abuse that fantastic camouflage that the T21 has, and I get heaps of spots and do very, very well for myself indeed. The V-stab thing, I can't emphasize enough how important having a vertical stabilizer is on a gun at tier 6. It's a really, really cool thing. The T21 also has 10 degrees of gun depression, or it does, to the best of my knowledge. I can't be 100% certain of that, but I'm pretty certain of that. The VK, for instance, has 220 millimeters of pen or something on its APCR, and yeah, so you're not going to have to worry about that. Don't worry about anyone else's pen because you don't have any armor. That's another thing. Like the VK, you can see there, it got the bounce on me. Was really well angled. You won't bounce very much at all. Your armor profile is pretty pants, but that's fine. It's a light tank. The SP1C's armor profile there is pretty pants as well. I'm firing HE at it and doing it very, very poorly. But for all that, it's a fun tank to drive, and it's nice to have, at least in this American line, where people are going to be a little bit disappointed. I think the Tier 8's the worst tank in the tree. I really don't like the Tier 8 tank at all. The autoloader has very, very poor damage numbers compared to the guys who can run, vents and rammer and such to increase their DPM. Your autoloader doesn't get the benefit from rammer, so you're missing 10% out straight away. It's got good burst, but that's for another day. I'm not going to get involved in it. You can see here, T21 just cruising up and over. It's targets of opportunity, and that's where you really should be at. Now I'm going to show you pretty standard game for me in a light tank, and I don't do huge amounts of damage, but it's pretty influential towards the team's final result. I'm going to roll up here on the right hand side on Middleburg. I've called everyone at the top because we have a heap of lights and mediums and only the one heavy, and our team responds with vigor, which is fantastic when you make the call and the team listens. That's really good news. I'm going to go to a little spot here on the right and show you there's a bush there, a little bit of brush. I'm going to slide up this hill and I'm going to stick my nose in the brush and basically spot enemy tanks as they roll up without being spotted. Now I'm using the bush there for cover, which is great, and this is why the armor is not so important on a T21, because you don't want to be on the front line. You don't want to be the guy that is moving around in front of guns. For the most part, you want to spot tanks when you can, give your team a chance to get up and see targets, which is exactly what we're doing here. And then when the light bulb goes off and you get spotted, vamoose. Now I'm going to vamoose. I'm going to pull back, but I'm then going to wait. I'm going to give it 9 seconds. Why? Because that's the time it takes for you to disappear off the enemy radar. And you can see there, just letting the respot go, and then I am rolling all the way down because I've spotted at the back there's going to be a couple of TDs. I've counted tanks, and I can see that there's a Nashorn missing and a little Stuggy missing. What I can do is roll up here, and I'm going to try and use the buildings, and look how quick this thing goes. Like, it gets up the hill beautifully. The Stug's rolling around on me. That's going to be too late. I'll track him. Always try and track tanks. And that's another reason I love having a V-stab on a tank like this, where you're doing a lot of on-the-move firing. And I'm going to go for the track on the Nash. I'm going to miss it, but I'm going to get his engine and absolutely wreck him, the poor little bugger. Really key there, that. And then just get around him and use that mobility to absolutely smash him, which is not really his fault. That's just how it is. The game is built for lights and mediums to smash non-turreted TDs when they find them at the back, and his team hasn't given him much support. Now, I'm using him as a shield. Basically, I'm just making sure that he is between me and the majority of the enemy guys, and then again, I'm just going to use my light tank skills, which is buggering off bloody quick and get out of there. And I'm going to push all the way down here, leave that VK on his own. Not interested in brawling him on his terms. I'm going to come back around here. My camo's reset by now. I'm pushing up. I'll knock this T-34-85 off, come back around, and really this is what the T-21 was built for. I mean, it's a fine on-the-move firing tank. It does very, very well like that, and that's what you use it for. It's all about just being smart in these light tanks. Now, the LTTB at Tier 7 has armor and this kind of mobility and that kind of gun depression. 8 degrees in your second. The VK2801 has good armor, excellent armor, in fact, for a light tank, especially at Tier 6. Has a heap of pen, much better gun handling, but it doesn't have the vertical stabilizer. So, although the VK is a much better tank in my opinion still, because it's quicker and all that kind of thing, This is a completely reliable tier 6 light tank, and that's what you're after. And if you're looking for a tank that's a nice spot in the line, you can keep this one. It's well worth hanging on to. You can keep the VK2801. They're the kind of tanks you want to drive at tier 6. You can keep the T71 for this line at tier 7, and then keep on rolling up to the T57 heavy and see how you go. I'm Bushcron Blitz. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. As always, if you consider sponsoring the channel, that'd be grand, but make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, have a listen to the podcast. There's heaps of podcast stuff coming up in the near future between Snake Eyes and I. We're doing a stream on Tuesday. It's going to be a live stream, and I've got some great ideas for a few live events I want to broadcast with the patrons, namely a gladiator-style tournament where we have 7-on-7, and the last in damage in each game gets flicked until we come down to a one-on-one situation, and the winner is the grinner. I'm Bushcon Blitz. You're lovely. Look after your families and stay safe on the battlefield.